this evening to the monthly community council meeting. Following the call to order, we always go through the leadership team roll call. So, Chief, if you would start, just introduce yourself and what area of responsibility you have.
Yes, I'm Michael Lilienthal, the Deputy Chief of Dorado Fire Department. I represent public safety, and my job is just to network any concerns you have as a community with the appropriate agency, and we just try and work together to solve whatever that issue might be.
I'm John Davey. I'm the chair of the Dorado Area Planning Advisory Committee, and we look at proposed development in Dorado and provide resident feedback or resident input to the process.
I'm Richard Ross. I'm chair of the Good Governance Committee. I inquire, monitor, and observe the activities of the process of government in Dorado County.
And I'm John Vania. I'm your planning commissioner for District 1.
I'm John Heidel, District 1 Supervisor.
And I'm Glenn Krakow. I'm your representative on the Community and Economic Development Advisory Committee for the Board of Supervisors.
And I'm Josh Felder. I'm an ER doc, and I'm here to represent healthy communities and help find ways to improve the health of our community.
Cindy?
Sorry.
Do I?
I'm Cindy Muntz. I'm Supervisor Heidel's assistant in outreach.
Very good. So the other thing I'd like to do is recognize the committee members or commissioners who may be here who aren't part of this particular leadership team. I know Alan Stansberry is with us this evening. He's on our Human Rights Commission, so he was appointed by District 1 to serve in that capacity. And they've got some new things coming up. You want to share anything, Alan?
Yes, good evening. I'm Alan Stansberry, Chair of the County Human Rights Commission. Our next meeting is July 22nd, and we're going to do something interesting. We're going to host a public forum. It'll be, I hope all of you can attend. It'll be open to the public. We'll be inviting all the major human rights and nonprofit organizations in the county to attend and give us about a 2 or 3 minute talk as to what observations they made with regard to human rights, whether or not there have been problems with minorities getting jobs or housing, or if there is some racial problems going on around the county. We want to get an assessment of what's going on. So if you all can make it, it's at the Placerville Veterans Memorial, and the time will be between 4:30 and 6:30 in the evening. July 22nd, that's a Monday. So come on down. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Alan. And I see Dr. Steve Clavera is here. He's on our Behavioral Health Commission. So, Steve, anything you want to share at this point? Okay. And are there any other commissioners or committee members that I didn't recognize? Yes?
Tina Bladen, Commission on Aging.
Commission on Aging. Very good. Thank you. Okay. And I know Raylene Nunn, who's our District 1 Commission on Aging member, is recovering from surgery, so she's going to be out of pocket for several months, but she will be hopefully returning to our community here sometime in the fall. So just to give you a heads up on what's going on with Raylene. Having completed that, we'll go to adoption of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes in terms of sequence or anything else by any of the leadership team? All right, seeing none, we'll accept the agenda as identified. Number 3, public comment. This is the opportunity we always want to forward anyone from the community who would like to speak on a subject that's not on tonight's agenda. Please come forward, give us your identification, give us your name, etc., and what your particular question, comment, or issue is. So with that, I know Paul has something to share with people.
Yeah, Paul Ragland, now a resident of Gold River. This will be my final public comment to any public body in El Dorado Hills or El Dorado County. And I wanted to raise a few things in hindsight from my experience here. And I regret that some of them are somewhat on the negative side. Some of them, actually the best examples come through my own homeowners association, where I was a director for 13 years and president for 10 years. And the bottom line for all of this is beware of politics, and I can summarize it. It works at any level. 2 cases in point. I talked with a former CAO of the county. I talked with one person who was one rung below the CAO when that person was with the county. Both shared the same story. caustic politics. It is extremely harmful to the functioning of the county government. And they were both said after moving to other public agencies and other public places, it was like a breath of fresh air. So that's part of the risk here. Some of that risk filtered to my homeowners association when we had a dispute purportedly about dimensional composition roofing, high quality dimensional composition roofing. And one of the eye openers, after moving, I discovered a backup for files I thought I had deleted on my computer containing all of my files related to that issue at that time, plus much more from the Waterford HOA. And there were two things that connected from that. One was Sean Hansen's argument for electing him to the Waterford Board of Directors. Now he is on the CSD as well, on that board. Because his arguments were libelous. They were false, defamatory, and published in writing as his campaign statements. And I'll cite just one example. He said that the Waterford Board saturated on a single issue to the exclusion of all else. Well, I can tell you no. We carried a full agenda, full spectrum of everything going on, and in executive session it was heavier than usual because this was at we reached the pinnacle, so to speak, actually the opposite of the pinnacle, in 2010 when the foreclosures were maxing out and just barely beginning to reverse in mid-year to quit going, having so many homes going into foreclosure. But the bottom line is we were covering all the business we should have, exercising the duties of care and loyalty that are passed to homeowners associations by way of the corporations code for nonprofit mutual benefit corporations. So he said we were being saturated. We were being saturated. It's not by us. One of the things I have in my records is an email from our association manager saying, "Can you help us out, please? We have received 200 emails from E. Ray Myers in the past 2 weeks." This is another dimension of politics at its worst. I'm not going to go into any details about these, but where this is headed is watch out, do fact checking whenever possible, perhaps even more than whenever possible. And on fact checking, I did a lot in connection with one issue where ultimately I resigned from the community council in APAC as a result, and that was the Mather Airport cargo noise controversy. There never was excess cargo noise. And the circumstance that best proved that was there was a time, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, when the cargo noise complaints logged by the Sacramento County airport system, the Mather noise complaints, went from over 1,000 per month from El Dorado Hills and Folsom to 0. And they've stayed at 0 since then. And when I saw that transition, I said, I'll bet Glenn Odie is no longer living in the city of Folsom. And I checked property records, and they confirmed my suspicion. Inference, I can't prove this, but I think it's good to say that that entire issue was generated due to one person. And the same thing can happen here. There are some other things where I can see fairly similar looking things can happen. Please watch out for it. If I could offer any parting device, it probably would be to institute some form of formal fact checking of statements in public. This goes for statements by the public, especially. Typically, people in office are less prone to make false statements, although there are times when the people elected do. So, anyway, I appreciate having lived in El Dorado Hills for nearly 3 decades, just a little over a year short of that. And I appreciate even more the improved traffic circumstances in Gold River, and plus the better availability of how to get from place A to place B, where place A is where I live. And anyway, Thank you all. You have a big challenge. My other recommendation is support El Dorado Hills Incorporation as a city. You need it. And thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Paul, for all the years of commitment you made to our community, so thank you. Okay, any other public comment? Yes.
Hi, I'm Karen Hurtage, and I'm a volunteer with the Friends of the El Dorado Hills Library. Jan couldn't make it, so she sent me instead. Just have a few quick things I wanted to tell you about. First of all, how many of you have library cards? How many of you are friends of the library? Okay. Well, I had it all planned that way. What I want to do is I want to encourage all of you to become friends of the library. And we're having the biggest difference between having a library card and being a friend is a library card is issued by the county, and it just allows you to borrow books and any other resources from the library. But the Friends of the Library is really the organization that raises money to extend and expand the resources that the library has. And as you probably know, a lot of very, very diligent people worked for 7 years to open up the library in 2006, and their work continued, and since 2006, over $600,000 has been raised and completely donated to our local library to enhance the programs, be it books or children's programs, youth programs, and adult programs. So we're encouraging, this is our summer program, we're encouraging everyone to become a lifetime member. It's only a $250 investment, never have to pay an annual fee again, and you will be invited to our donor appreciation party that's coming up later in the summer. We're going to be one of the lucky few that gets to be at Oakmont El Dorado Hills before they open, so that gives you one chance perhaps to see it. So I want to encourage you all to join us, and we have some flyers back there, and you can of course do it online, we're modern. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Karen. Any other public comment? Yes.
Tim White, and I don't have a complaint. I actually want to share a story of what I consider to be superior constituent service by you, Supervisor Heidel, and your assistant Cindy. Last Wednesday, I wrote Cindy an email saying I was concerned about the commercial signs that were at the corner of Silva Valley and Green Valley. They were for tutoring, 2 of them for tutoring. They've been there for 5 or 6 months. There's other small signs that, quite frankly, I can't read even with my glasses on, but they're there. I think they're visual pollution, if you would. So Wednesday afternoon, I got a response, and Cindy had forwarded to a code enforcement officer by the name of Greg Abbott. Thursday, Greg sent saying he's going to go check. Friday, he had already gone out. He checked. He has forwarded the complaint to the Environmental Health Department, who are going to take those commercial signs and get rid of them. I also complained about the commercial signs that you can see right out here at the corner. There's 8 or 9 there, but apparently those are on private property. I still think they're visual pollution. They're always there, but they're on private property, so they have the right to be there. So again, I want to do a quick shout out to you, to Cindy, and also to Greg Abbott, because I think that is an example of superior constituent service by your office and by the code enforcement officer.
Thank you, Tim. Any other public comment? Yeah. Lenny.
Lenny Patani, Crescent Hills. I'll be brief. First of all, I actually called environmental, and Harvard is county property, and I was told they could take it down in the next 2 days. So I can't believe when you call one agency, they say it's not theirs, and you call another, it's not there. Everyone jumps all over the place. No one wants to admit, but that apparently is county property. I also called, and the woman was very nice and said, we will have someone out tomorrow, and those signs will be taken down. So this is county property. This is not private property in Harvard there. The reason I'm here to talk tonight is I came here a couple months ago, spoke to you about the pavilions at Green Valley and Francisco. I appreciate you got 2 of the 3 things done right away, the road, and I can't remember what the second one is, but I still have a problem. I would like whoever owns that facility to tell us if all the way to Green Valley is their property, because they were supposed to landscape that property. I remember the picture had grass to Green Valley. And my second concern right now is, and I'm fantastic, we have the fire chief here and a representative. As a firefighter for 32 years, I'm appalled to see that facility has knee-high grass in the front And to the rear of the building, 30 feet from the building, has knee-high dry grass. We're talking about life safety here. So someone from the fire department, prevention or whatever, needs to get out there tomorrow and have them weed whack that. But I'm really concerned. I want to know why they didn't landscape all the way to Green Valley when they said they were going to. Thank you very much.
So I've asked that question of George Carpenter, who was involved with the overall transaction. He said he would check into it and find out what was going on and get back to me. I've not heard back from him. It's been about a week. So when I get that information, I'll share it with you later. I had the same concern having driven by. And I did want to go back and basically highlight very quickly code enforcement. The county decided that with only 2 code enforcement officers over many, many years and a lot of delinquencies associated with that the county needed to step up its game, particularly with respect to vegetation management, clearing of junk, et cetera, on lots. So we now have 5 full-time code enforcement officers, a leader, and what they did is for the 5 districts, they've assigned 1 code enforcement officer for each district. So Greg is our District 1 code enforcement officer. We have somebody now who's very interested in what happens in El Dorado Hills, and if we contact him, I'm confident he will respond. So there is a change in the administration, all of this led by getting a new Director of Planning and Building who implemented this change based upon some requests of board supervisors and other people. So I think we're going to see improved code enforcement as time goes on. But if you do have a complaint, there is an online form that you can file a formal complaint. It'll go into code enforcement. And I can guarantee at this point somebody's going to look at it, take some action on it, as opposed to having it sitting there and not hearing anything back, et cetera, et cetera. So our responsiveness at the county level, I believe, has changed substantially. If you don't get a response, let me know and I'll follow up on it. But I think they're really trying to do a better job in today's environment than they did for many, many years. So any other public comment? All right, then I'd like to introduce our guest speaker this evening. Debbie Johnston is here with us, and she's going to share with us the El Dorado County Long-Term Ombudsman Program. This is one of the activities that John Rasler, for those of you who know John, has participated in several years. He's been a very, very strong advocate. He's trying to recruit additional people to help. It's not an easy job, but we do need people to step up and volunteer for the Ombudsman's program and that kind of support. So Debbie's going to share a little bit more information with you, and if you are inclined to want to find out more, please let Cindy know or let Debbie know, and we can follow up from there. But welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Sorry. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been serving as a long-term care ombudsman for nearly a decade. I've been with the Area Agency on Aging Office here in El Dorado County, house out of the Classville Senior Center for about 20 years. It's my first job out of graduate school. My focus was on gerontology, coming here to El Dorado County and serving in the Placerville Area Agency on Aging Office for $12 an hour was a dream come true. I was very, very excited. I've been here since. I've run multiple programs. The Ombudsman program came to me unexpectedly, and I really did think that it was going to be a good fit. I have a personal history of growing up in the nursing homes. My parents are physicians, and my mom worked with the geriatric population. My dad birthed half of my friends in Orange County. So we learned to serve in the nursing home, to volunteer there, to visit with patients while my mom read charts and met with the nurses. I thought it was a great place. It was Disneyland to me. I felt very comfortable. So when I talked to my mom about this job coming up, I thought, oh, this is great. This is perfect. This is my arena. Going in as a visitor as a child to get somebody to smile while you're painting their nails is very different than going in with the heavy obligation of utilizing your keen observational skills and problem-solving skills to change the life or save the life of the residents. It wasn't the fit I thought it would be. It's very challenging. It's very stressful. It's not what I remember as a child. So it's very different when you go in to visit versus you go in to save. So this presentation provides a general overview of the Ombudsman program. And for the most part, we are the key problem solvers in a facility. We are going to ensure that the program makes sure that the residents are not alone, that the family members are not alone, that the staff who are trying to work with us on problems behind the scenes are not alone, that we have a team effort to try to work through the issues. So as members of El Dorado County's most frail elderly population are making that transition from home into our long-term care facilities, a strong social support system for each one of them is critical. But unfortunately, the long-term care residents that we're serving pretty much the majority of them do not have anyone to look out for their best interests when it comes to their health, safety, welfare, and rights. In fact, it's estimated that over 60% of long-term care residents in California have no one. They may have family. They have no one visiting them to help to observe care and to report and resolve problems. They are left alone. El Dorado County is no different in that landscape. Okay, so first and foremost, the advocates, we do advocate for quality of life and quality of care for our residents. But before I go through the program real quickly, which I wanted to give you a snapshot of a day in the life of an ombudsman told by our beloved ombudsman, Marilyn Tarbell, who has since passed. She spent her very last month on this earth serving this program. So she had indicated in one of her reports that I found her alone, parked in the hallway. Joanne was slumped in the wheelchair, frail, ignored, and forgotten. Her gray hair was matted, her clothes were dirty. She had dried food on her face and her hands. I was shocked that she was sitting in her own waste. Flies were landing on her person and on the food tray in front of her. With flat affect and glassy eyes, Joanne was completely stripped of her dignity. Where was she? She was in one of the long-term care facilities right here in El Dorado County. Joanne might have continued in that state if Ombudsman Marilyn hadn't made that unannounced visit that day to those isolated residents. The building's exterior in the front room were very well maintained. It gives the impression that the residents are treated with equal care. However, as Marilyn made her way to the facility's deck, it was quite obvious that there was something completely different going on. Joanne was an 89-year-old resident and would have stayed in that state had Marilyn not intervened. She indicated that it still haunted her till the day that she died. Due to the Ombudsman intervention, Joanne was helped immediately and followed by filing of a formal complaint with the California Department of Public Health. So no one should endure that type of neglect. Ombudsman representatives here, including John, work to combat that undignified treatment. So you see, the Ombudsman program is rooted in a very, very simple yet powerful principle that all older adults and individuals with disabilities are entitled to equal rights, to dignity, and to have living a life free of abuse no matter where they live. So, a brief history of the program. We saw an influx of nursing homes back when Medicaid and Medicare were introduced, before there was no public incentive to build nursing homes. After the reimbursement mechanisms were introduced, they popped up left and right. And what we saw were health and safety issues popping up left and right across the country. There wasn't the medical care, there wasn't the caregivers, there wasn't the food necessary to provide care in these nursing homes. So a study back in the 70s indicated that they were labeled warehouses for the old and junkyards for the dying. So it was clearly obvious that the systems in place to protect the residents had failed and something needed to change. So they enhanced the number of state regulators to go out to the facilities across the state, and they created this ombudsman demonstration project for the nursing homes. It quickly started with 5, and it went within years, a few years, to every single state was mandated through the Older Americans Act to have this ombudsman program. It then started to encapsulate the assisted living facilities across the country as well, and the name changed to long-term care facility ombudsman program. So the amendments to the Older Americans Act have continued to enhance the responsibilities of our program, but haven't provided the resources to conduct the enhanced activities for the program. So, the responsibilities of the program as outlined in the Older Americans Act. We're going to identify, investigate, and resolve complaints. Bottom line, that's our primary activity. We're providing information to older adults and their families about the long-term care system. We provide information regarding our long-term care facilities. We're not a placement agency, but I find it much easier for me to review the licensing reports of a potential facility that somebody's looking at than it is to just send a consumer to a website. I really hate sending somebody out there not knowing if they've gotten the help that they need. Our homes, especially here in El Dorado Hills, we have the greatest number of small assisted living facilities in the area. Each one of them is very, very unique. You just have to go into them to see that their characters are different, their service histories are different, the feel is different. And each person who may call the office and need help, it really depends on their level of desire of socialization, their level of care need. There's many things that geographic location to a family member that could potentially actually visit that could help us to narrow it down. But we are not a placement agency, but we will help get it down and maybe even meet the ombudsman assigned to the facility that you're interested in so you can get a better idea and even tour the facility with them. We help develop and support resident councils. We educate facility owners and providers. And we spend a lot of time providing training on resident rights issues, on practices to prevent abuse, which it's funny that they really do need those reminders to provide care and compliance with regulations, but this is what we do working together to ensure that the residents are well cared for. Also in California, we are obligated to witness advanced healthcare directives for nursing home residents only. So when somebody is needing to execute an advanced healthcare directive, it's not legally binding until an ombudsman witness has taken part of that process. So we have a private conversation with the resident to ensure that they understand at the time what they're signing, who they're assigning as their agent, if they had felt coerced or if anybody had tried to compel them to make a decision, and then we're able to witness the document for them. So the primary responsibility of the program is to serve as a resident advocate. So ombudsman support resident-centered care, residents guide all of our advocacy work. We serve as the first line of defense for the residents, and it really is to everyone's advantage to work together to manage these problems at the local level before they escalate. But I really, no matter how hard I try, and I try to be funny, I try to be sarcastic, there's different approaches I've taken to help administrators understand that we really can be a friendly asset. But our John, who is our volunteer, who was recently recognized for outstanding volunteer work in the community, is probably the one ombudsman who generates the most complaints or concerns about his conduct in the field, simply because he's out there more often than most people. And I had the vice president of one of the larger corporations in our area who really thinks aging is quite beautiful talk to me in person to the senior center in the midst of a rainstorm to ask me questions like, why is John there so much? We don't see ombudsman in Sacramento. Why is he meeting privately with residents? Why doesn't he tell me everything that's going on? So I've learned, I'm like, okay, so this is about education and awareness. I'm going to give you grace right now because I understand that you obviously don't understand why we're in your facility. But I can guarantee you we can work better together than we can work as adversaries. It actually ended up in hugs and we exchanged pictures of our kids. So I think that worked out great, but that took 2.5 hours. And this is the vice president of a corporation who really should know what we do because they're obligated to provide access to their residents, to any ombudsman who knocks on their door. So, who represents the ombudsman program? Well, every single state in the country has an ombudsman program, and headed by a state ombudsman program in California, there's 35 ombudsman programs. We're the 29th ombudsman program. We have 9 certified resident representatives. The ombudsman staff, which is me, myself, and I, and our certified volunteers that I make them sit through. It's a 36-hour mandated training, but here it's about 45 to 50 hours with a 2 to 3 week internship with an experienced ombudsman before they're ready to go out on their own. People like to say I should spend more time with John, but if he were here, it'd be so much more fun. So who are the volunteers? It really takes a special person to commit to this program. It takes somebody with really thick skin. What motivates us is that these facilities, for many people, not all people, are the place of last resort. I personally am not going to end up in one. But where people might feel lonely and discarded, scared and powerless and unaware of their rights, this program is about them, our obligation to them, and to their sense of well-being. The work is very challenging, and you have to have the wherewithal to be able to confront administrators, sometimes angry family members, and also the heavy heart to know that you may have changed one conversation with the resident that day, but overall the facility practices and procedures are going to remain the same, and we have to remain vigilant. So, who do we serve? Anybody, regardless of age, who's in a long-term care facility. So in some areas of the state that might include pediatric nursing homes. Doesn't include. I would be so unprepared for that. But the resident guides all of our action. We need resident consent to take any action. We seek to resolve complaints only as the resident sees it, not as the daughter sees it, not as the family member sees it, not as the spouse sees it, not as the doctor sees it. So it's the resident, whether or not it makes sense, whether or not professionally or personally we agree with it. That's what we're seeking to do, is to resolve a problem to their satisfaction. So, for example, complaints are brought to us by anyone and everyone. In California, mandated reporters are mandated to report any suspicion of abuse and neglect to law enforcement or an ombudsman. And we're the counterpart to adult protective services in the community. So whoever brings it to our attention, it's confidential. The first thing we're going to do is beeline it to the resident and let them know, hey, we received a concern about so-and-so. We don't let them know who it came from unless we have consent to do so. And do you agree? Is there something that we can do to help? Very often that snowballs into about 8 other complaints, or sometimes it's, how did you know about that? I don't want to talk about that. We're done. So it's, if the resident has capacity to make decisions, they can determine the desire of their intervention. It's that simple. If it's not a problem for them, it's done, we're done. If it is a problem for them, but they don't want us to do anything, we're done. We just walk away. And you have to remember the intent of the program. Residents have their rights. There are many, many, many really good homes in our area with really good caregivers, even in the worst of homes. But residents tend to have their rights sidestepped a little. And the last thing that we're going to do is present ourselves to be a confidential, safe resource where we can listen to them, they can talk with us, they can share what's going on, but they control each step and how we're going to intervene. If we were to take over, they would never talk to us again. So we are able to provide our advocacy services through 2 main activities. That is through routine monitoring visits and then the complaint investigation visits. They're very distinct activities. One is the routine monitoring visits. Prevention is really the hallmark of the program. So in order to establish and maintain a presence in long-term care facilities here in Dorado County, we visit them often. State and federal mandate is at least quarterly. Our nursing homes, because there's more residents and more complex medical needs, we like to go at least 1 to 2 times a month, sometimes 2 to 4 times a month, and our assisted living facilities at least monthly. The quiet facilities from whom we receive no complaints do not mean anything that help me sleep at night any better than I already do with all the issues going on in our facilities. They actually scare me more. It's the quiet facilities and the ones that we don't hear from, the residents who won't speak to us. They have this mind think that you can go in and you feel it, that you just really wish you could do a sleepover and see what's going on. And we did have an ombudsman volunteer for our program who was very ill. She ended up having spinal surgery, going into one of our nursing homes and into one of our assisted living facilities, completely coherent of what was going on around her, especially when she was placed next to the nurse's station at the nursing home. I brought her into a meeting. She never did complete certification because she got ill again and is now placed again. I did invite her to a meeting as a specific training for our ombudsman to hear what it is that she heard at night, to hear what it is, the impression of family members versus the actual care that was provided to the residents that they thought they were well taken care of. To hear that some of those caregivers were working their tail off and trying the best they can in a system that's just broken in some homes, corrupt in others, and really good in a handful of the homes in our area. And so she was placed for a good 8 months in both levels of facilities, and boy, I couldn't have paid for that information. It was enlightening, disheartening, sobering. So when we go out, we have immediate unrestricted access to the residents who are free to move about the facility, independent and free of escort. We have had facility staff try to shadow us, try to kick us out, tell us that somebody doesn't want to see us, whatever it is. There's a really good attempt at willful interference, even though that usually is resolved with conversation with me and the administrator because it's prohibited by federal and state law, with a $2,500 penalty per incident. But when we're going out, we're monitoring facility compliance with federal and state laws. We're observing facility practices, procedures, and really, quite frankly, just the relationship between staff and the residents. We're really quiet. We just like to be a fly on the wall. We'll observe environmental conditions. We'll provide information to staff, residents, and family when we're out in the field. We want to make sure that everyone knows that they have access to an independent access. lot of people don't want to talk to us. That's okay. We're strangers. I get it. But we hope that they know, if they see us enough, that they can trust us, that at some point if they need the help, they'll access us. We also want to really observe those people who are unable to speak for themselves, whether through cognitive impairment or other issues. They really can't attest to their own care. So short of a full body exam, which we don't provide any direct care like that, we like to look at things like visually, is their skin integrity compromised, they have any strong body odors, anything like that. Anything that we can, to the best of our ability, to see if they look like they're well cared for. We'll observe call light wait times. We've had somebody take a 30-day journal of that, working with volunteers. That didn't turn out very well. The administrator kicked the ombudsman out of the facility and brought to their attention that there might be a problem with lengthy call light response times. We'll observe meal service and food quality. We had an ombudsman at Thanksgiving. This is a really good story. Went there and saw what looked like, I don't know, I think spam might have looked a little bit more appealing, but something they called meat on the plate. So she went in the kitchen, grabbed a plate, brought it into the administrator's office, put it on his desk, and said, "Let's eat." I would have loved to have been a video camera in that room, because he was first astonished that she did that, second astonished by the food he looked at on the plate. So we deal with a lot of issues like that. Some of them may seem small or insignificant. They're not. When you're thirsty and that water cup is out of reach, when the call light has been placed over there and you can't move to get it, when the food, which is supposed to pass as spaghetti, was just cooked with dry noodles with hot dog slices on it, there was a cultural issue with the understanding of what the food preferences were for the residents right here in El Dorado Hills in one of our facilities. We were able to help resolve that. So the other tasks that we are primarily involved with are the complaint investigations. This really is the focus of our work, because it's what takes precedence over everything else. Most of our team is completing the monitoring visits. Members like John and Mark and a few others are really focused on the complaint investigations and primarily what they do. So again, like I said, we'll meet with the residents in the private area, determine what they've been able to do, what they'd like to have done, and see what we can do as far as interviews to have, documents to review, observations to make, to ensure that we can help them resolve the problem. So when we're investigating, we are investigating out of fact. We really do want to know what's going on. But that's not our main goal. Our main goal is just to resolve the issue to the resident's satisfaction, however they see it. We will call upon others to fulfill their responsibilities. I'm not going to get that glass of water and bring it over to them. I'm going to look at the CNA to remind them that they're supposed to be doing this, and I'll check on it the next day. The problem with our program is the number of complex complaints over the last decade has changed significantly. So our cases that are coming in require enhanced regulatory review prior to the case assignment. So it can take me anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours to prep for John or anybody else. I succinctly will review all of the regulations, state and federal, put them together in a summary, get some questions I think will get the ball going as far as what interviews I want them to participate in, what documents I need them to review, if I'd like them to participate in a care plan meeting to help resolve an issue. So just getting started is taking longer. We have higher level of training needs for our ombudsman because of the complexities of our cases, and we have more time that's needed for our cases, and we seemingly feel a little bit less effective because of that length of time. So 10 years ago when I first started, it might be call lights, response time. It would be hydration issues and not getting the water that they needed. It would be something that we could look at in 15, 30 minutes and resolve in a couple days. That's not what we're getting anymore. Today, most of the cases are involving some type of neglect or abuse, very difficult family issues because dysfunctional families do not get better with age. Complex medical problems, creative record keeping, financial abuse. Just to get started to investigate can take days, weeks, resolution time can take months. So then we're just snowballing over each other. So, what have we done over the last year? We were busy. We were able to visit all of our facilities at least quarterly. We attend resident council meetings regularly, only upon invitation. We provide community education, training to facility staff is really important. Consultations and to staff and individuals are the primary activity other than our visits. So I provide a lot of consultation to facility staff. We have some great facilities, and I can tell you when they're great because they'll give me a heads up on a problem before it even comes to my attention. Most of the time I never even see it later. But we'll start to talk about, well, what should we do with this resident? What do you think we can do as far as regulations are concerned? We've got a family member who's being disruptive when they're visiting. Do you have any ideas of what we can do? Do you think you can just spend a care plan meeting to smooth things over? Things like that. So it works out great to have the consultations with the facility staff prior to an actual complaint investigation. We provide quite a few consultations to individuals out in the field simply because people need to know what their rights are. Family members need to know what their rights are with mom and dad, and to know how they can negotiate the system. It's very complex. So it's not easy work. It can be quite disturbing, and it can be wonderful. And like I said, we have more in El Dorado Hills than in any other region in the county. We have some really good facilities. We have plans for more beds to open up. Memory care beds make me a little nervous because we're dealing with residents who may not be able to attest to their care, but we are up for the challenge and excited. Last year we resolved 91 complaints in the nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Not all of them are about the care. Sometimes they're about family members. A lot of the times now over the last couple of years, it's been family interference, siblings fighting. And we don't tend to hear from them until something's going on with the potential end of life and or property rights issues. So we might see them at the beginning where they're placing mom and dad, but then we know when we're out there visiting from staff from our own observations that no one's visiting mom or dad until an advanced health care directive needs to be executed, until a power of attorney is being argued. That's when we start to see family members starting to get really involved. When I do get family looking for consultation, they'll tell me how regularly they're going out and working with staff. I just applaud them for their efforts because they shouldn't be being nominated, but they tend to be. And of course, I'm usually hearing most of the complaints, but that's what we also see out in the field is that most of the residents we're visiting are alone. And so we're there to make sure that they don't feel alone, or at least they know that at some point if they're willing to reach out, we'll be there for them. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Let's go.
Oh.
Or at least one.
At least one. Being we're talking about people who, often are very fragile, don't have a lot of people looking out for themselves in their community. All the restaurants have these posted reviews. They get their A, they get their B rating. I've spoken to many families. They find it very hard even to find official, complaints about facilities in our area. Is there any discussion? Has there been any discussion where people can get a scorecard on facilities?
Yeah.
When Joint Commission goes out to hospitals, they score them.
Yeah.
So,
and some people know about their nursing home, the Medicare nursing home 5-star rating. It never seems to really align with what we're experiencing out in the field. Because they were self-reported, many of them are self-reported variables. Okay?
That is something they can buy, but
they can look at it online.
no, I'm just saying the facilities can, through their membership, have these different 5-star ratings, but we're not sure what they really mean. But an independent rating, like the health department does for restaurants.
And public health, the California Department of Public Health is the licensing body for our skilled nursing facilities, and community care licensing through the California Department of Social Services is the licensing body for assisted living facilities. Just recently, when I first started out, you have to go down to the office in Sacramento and petition to have the public record copy for each of the facilities. And we did have one organization that was doing that down in San Diego. It was great. We were as ombudsman like, this is fantastic. If they can only, get that information here, because I don't have any resources to get a Sacramento petition for there. But now it's available online. It has been for a few years now. So if you go onto either one of their websites, you can pull up the facility community care licensing. I like a little bit more for the assisted living facilities, which you have all here in El Dorado Hills. So you go on the community care licensing, and you can just Google community care licensing facility search, and you'll pull up the elderly care and the assisted living, and then it will list the facilities in our area. We have one pending right now that hasn't had a pre-licensing visit. And you can pull up, not all the reports are available, they should be, but they're not. Many reports, and what I'll do when somebody's asking me, I'll start to narrow it down to 2 or 3. I think we got 2 or 3 based on the caregiver level of care and expertise, based on their level of socialization you want in the home. Because some of these homes, there really isn't socialization, but they don't have residents that are very interactive. Don't have caregivers that are trying to challenge them on that either. But, and then we have some that are really active and excited and have a plentiful activity calendar. So it really depends on what you're looking for, but you can pull up the facility and you can read. If you just read 2 or 3 of those reports, you'll start to see any systemic trends. Whether the complaints were actually substantiated or not, you'll start to see that more and more people complain about this. And at some point, because they're not substantiated, does not mean that it didn't happen. But I'll start to see what trends and issues are for a facility. And that helps me at least give an unbiased summary to a family member who may be looking at a particular facility in the area. So I like to take the time. I'll let them know you can go to this website yourself, but I'll get them on the phone, we'll walk through it together, and I'll give them a summary snapshot, because it's easier for me to understand what those trends might be than it would be for them looking at these reports. They're not the easiest things to read. And the California Department of Public Health has available theirs too. So at least you can look at the more detailed inspection reports. But again, we're trying to get out the monthly, which I think is pretty awesome, because federal and state mandate is quarterly. The state goes out there 1 day out of 365 for their comprehensive visit. 1 day, 1 day, 1 day. So when I first started with the Ombudsman program 10 years ago with our assisted living facilities, it was about every 5 years. I was just about dropped. I'm like, are you kidding? So if we're not out there at least once a year, no one's going out to these facilities. So now the laws have changed, and now they're going out there annually, which is great, and they're really on the ball. I mean, they're out there every 12 to 13 months, and they're publishing their reports pretty quickly too. I'm kind of impressed. But again, it doesn't tell you the whole story. You don't know until you go into the homes. You go into the homes and you just observe. You talk to the residents. You talk to family members who are there. Sometimes you talk to staff members who really want to share what's going on. But we have some great homes in our area. We have some homes that are not so great with 1 or 2 caregivers that you would trust your home with. You just don't know.
You would hope every place has people you would trust your mom.
Well, I was just...
My point is that most people don't know about that. They don't know about the Community Care Licensing Bureau. They don't know about these agencies. They don't know where to look. And it's not easy when they start looking for care for a loved one, especially when it's kind of an emergency situation. That it might be nice if, with all the great information you get when you go review the facilities as a prospective resident, that they had some sort of required information they gave you as far as, maybe not what their score is, but maybe at least access to where they can find the information.
Well, and when you go out to your facility, you can ask for the most recent licensing survey, and they're obligated to show it to you. So that's great. But again, are the surveys of 1 day snapshot going to give you the real story? Sometimes they can kind of give you a hint, an idea. They want to see if it's a horror film or a comedy or a nurturing romantic love story. Because they're all they fit in all those categories. But I was telling somebody, you just, I try to stay very positive because we're supposed to be objective. We have some really great homes in our area. We're about to get a few more that I'm really good hopes with. John has had some really good talks with the administrators. However, if you just can't believe that it just can't be true, I'm telling you it is. And Mary, our volunteer, who just happened to experience a snapshot of less than a year in both levels of the facility, it was worse than we thought. It was disheartening. All I can tell you as family members is just to visit. The more often you visit, the more they know that there's an extra pair of eyes and ears, and there is care that's enhanced for that loved one. For those that don't have anybody, the ombudsman have to focus on saying, hey, we know Mary, we'll check on her next time we're out there. It's a nice little, positive threat, but somebody's keeping an eye on her, somebody cares. But for the most part, we have so many unbefriended elders in the community that really have nobody. There's no family left, there's no friends visiting. Every once in a while, we might get a church member, an overzealous church member, who I get suspicious of in a heartbeat. Because I still get complaints about that. And I attend church. It's when somebody comes out of the woodwork and is aggressively pursuing an isolated resident that I get real nervous about. And we have no regulatory, I didn't even say this, I didn't go through my whole session. We have no regulatory or enforcement authority. I'm very clear with our administration. Let's just get the defensiveness off the table. We got nothing. But we can be clear that, hey, let's handle it here before it goes there, because we can take it there. With resident consent only, but I don't emphasize that. But we can take it there if we need to. It's so much easier to manage it in your own backyard than it is to have state come. But the only authority we have is to access residents, to speak to them confidentially, to have unimpeded conversations with them. That's it. Well, thank you.
I just wanted to thank you. I can't thank you enough. My mom's in an assisted living place, and I'm grateful I have a sister who lives in the area, and she's very proactive, but, you know, I've heard some stories and stuff, and so it's a thankless job, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank you
For
very
you and
much.
volunteers. So.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Debbie. Great presentation. Okay, I'm going to move into item 4, the supervisor communications, and run through these fairly quickly. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen the updated frequently asked questions about the Costco. There was a stakeholders meeting held here locally with the previous stakeholders wherein Costco shared their current concept, and that's been put on the county website. It's been out there on Nextdoor, so if you haven't seen it yet, I can give you references as how to go find it. But the bottom line is they're now proposing using the site that was defined for their gas station originally to include both the warehouse and the gas station. So it's a section of land between Clarksville Crossing and Silver Valley Parkway. So they've moved from what I consider to be the east side of Silver Valley Parkway to the west side of Silver Valley Parkway. That changes a lot of things. It moves it further away from the elementary school that's there. It moves it away from the residences a little bit further. It does create some additional concerns relative to traffic flows in some of that area, but there has to be a full CEQA done, California Environmental Quality Act analysis to determine what traffic impacts, noise impacts, all kinds of impacts would be. But that's the current proposal they've laid on the table. They did mention that they're working with EDH 52, which owns the overall project, who wants to also submit a parallel set of plans that would define what goes on the east side, where Costco originally proposed, because now that would free all of that area up for their development, which in the past they've had discussions about gas stations and hotels, the big box, which I think Costco would satisfy that part of it. So EDH 52 has not provided any specifics yet on what they plan to do with that remainder piece of property. As that information becomes available and they're willing to share it with our Director of Communications, Carla Haas, who's really kind of the centerpiece of all of this communication, then that information will become available. So I can't answer any questions about what's going to go in the site Costco originally proposed for the warehouse, because I don't know. They're evidently talking to several potential commercial operations businesses to come in there, but they haven't disclosed who or when or how much. We expect that to happen sometime between now and the fall, because Costco is talking about submitting an application, their application in the September timeframe. So September might be October, might be November, but that's what they're currently targeting, which means the EDH 52 part of it would be submitting the application at the same point in time. So that's kind of where we stand. I will tell you that the impression I got was Costco is very serious about trying to locate a store here. They've gone as far as talking about 200 underground parking sites to make it fit within the smaller area, approximately 16 acres. So if the gas station and their warehouse are all on the same site, in order to get enough footprint for all the parking, and there's about 800 parking stalls proposed, they would have to have about 200,000 be underground. So that, when you start getting excavation and building underground parking and stuff, costs go up. Not the Costco, but costs go up. So they are basically showing a willingness to spend more money to do this right, to meet the public, the community's needs. So I'm encouraged that those conversations, if they file an application and go forward, will be hopefully beneficial from the standpoint of, we know from their past history, they are a good community member. They want to work with people. So we just have to be patient, let it play out as it will, and see what the other application comes in. I think APAC at their meeting is probably going to spend more time going through the formal drawings and stuff, so I didn't want to take the time tonight to try to share that if you haven't seen it. But the APAC meeting, I'm sure John will be explaining that, is going to put up the figures and have more dialogue and conversation, because it is part of the planning process, so I think that's where it appropriately fits. So any short questions on Costco that I can answer? Hopefully I've covered the general. Lenny?
Yeah, I walked the site today, John. On that smaller site on the west side?
Yeah.
There's some structures there. That's not a cemetery or anything, is it? What is
no,
that?
it's not a cemetery. There's no dwelling site, but the Costco property would only be developed off the corner, right at the corner of Clarksville and Silver Valley Parkway. There's the structures and others. That is a dedicated piece of property that will not be built on. So they actually show that in their plan. There's that corner piece there that they can't utilize for anything. It's a set aside, so to speak. So I think that's where the particular structure you're talking about resides. I haven't tried to walk it myself and measure it out, but I think from the maps, and again, APAC can discuss it in more detail and they can research that, but I'm pretty sure that's where that old structure remnants are located. So, okay, with that, I'm going to move on. We'll leave it. Oh, okay, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Luke Hansen. I'm
Yes,
a parent of students at Oak Meadow and a recent volunteer at the Parent-Teacher Association there. In coming to this meeting to try to understand, are there any options for the community to request for that area next to Oak Meadow to be zoned differently? That's basically that there's no way to change that, or is there any way for the community to engage in requesting basically a completely different situation for that plot of land on the east side of Facil Valley? I will note that the revised plan definitely welcomed that change of moving it away from the school, and going from there, wondering what opportunities there could be to designate that land differently, either more residential or a park or a small commercial instead of big box, or any other options that might exist in the process.
My understanding, I'm no planning expert, that property is entitled and it was done by the county several years ago. It started out being residential zoned. It was changed to commercial, and commercial has existed on that property, I believe, since 2007. So there's a long history, and I believe it would take the landowner's desire to come forward and ask for a rezone to change that, since they are currently entitled under the provisions in which they submitted their application several years ago to change it from single-family residential to commercial. So I don't think so. I'm not an expert again. We could certainly ask those questions of our planning department, but I think it would take a willingness from the current property owner to make changes for that to happen. So that's the best information I can provide.
So the property owner would need to support that change.
Yes, they would want to go and be willing to submit a rezone application to change to something else. That's the way I understand it has to work, since they're currently entitled.
And part of that too is that rezone was recognized, it was a need from the general plan. That it was identified in the general plan, voter approved general plan, that that's a commercial area, it was zoned residential. They made the request, I think, 2004 they started, 2008 they applied, 2012 it was approved. So it's a component of the general plan as well. So it would really take a lot of work on the behalf of the property owner to really chase that down. Tim has some.
Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
With respect to the rezoning, that 46 acres on the east side is currently, as you know, zoned for big box. When EH52 presented their plans 3 years ago, they did admit that they would have to rezone that section because right now it does not allow for a hotel, self-storage, shops, and restaurants. So they did admit that they would have to rezone it from big box commercial to the next stage down, which is small scale or something else commercial.
I haven't heard any talks about them rezoning, so maybe they're rethinking what goes in there. I don't know.
Yeah,
Because there's certain types of applications are conditional use permit within a given zoning, and they may be targeting those things. I just don't know.
In 2017, they came to, well, they didn't come to APAC, it was just on the county website. We reported about it, and that when they presented the plan for 350,000 square feet, they identified that it was zoned for big box or commercial, regional, and that they were looking more for a commercial local, and so that they would be seeking that. But then nothing really came forward that plan. There was some traffic concerns with circulation around the interchange. DOT had talked about it, and then nothing happened until Costco came forward with a letter of intent. And so now they're talking about what they could do with their other properties. So. But it's still zoned the way it is. And to your credit, that maybe a conversation could be had to maybe, if they have a project envision, we don't know what it is yet, a conversation wouldn't hurt, maybe from the PTO, reaching out to see if there's something that they would be willing to, meet halfway or part of the way. I know we had talked about.
Well, the advantage of the discussion at the APAC meeting is we generally have a planner there, and I believe Mel Pavolinas will probably be at the APAC meeting. He knows all the history on this, He's the one that went through the history, and it was actually rezoned in 2007, as I understand, and there was a parcel split that came later. But when you trace it back per mill, it was actually 2007 when the shift was made. But he can bring the documents, he can cover all of it. He knows firsthand all the history, and I want to make sure we present this stuff accurately. But the APAC discussion would be the better venue to discuss it as opposed to tonight's meeting. I just want to give everybody an update, brief update. I get you a little bit more interested and understand what's going on there, ask the questions, and then we'll cover it.
Okay, so that APAC update is next.
It's next Wednesday.
Next
In this
Wednesday.
building at 7 o'clock.
The 10th.
Yes.
Yeah, he's going to cover a summary of it when we get to that part of the agenda. But thank you for your inputs. Okay, moving on beyond Costco, the second item I had is fire insurance cancellations. And we're going to have a little discussion under Health and Communities about one of the efforts going on locally. But I want to make people aware of the fact that even on radio now, they're saying people are having a difficult time getting fire insurance in El Dorado Hills, or the rates are going way up. And I have to tell you, we in El Dorado Hills have a unique situation. Where I live in Lake Hills, we are Tier 1 by the Cal Fire designations. But yet within District 1, we have Tier 2 and Tier 3. So we have moderate risk, higher risk, and then extreme risk, all within 95762. And my understanding is some of the insurance companies took the liberty of saying, we're going to cancel all policies within 95762. That's a given insurance company. Because they have heard of cancellations in El Dorado Hills. Now, I don't know all the facts, but there's those kinds of things going on, which seem totally inappropriate for areas that aren't designated high risk to have their insurance premiums increase substantially because of what I'll call hearsay as opposed to a valid fire threat or fire risk condition. So there's a lot of discussions going on. Josh is going to talk about some of the things going on within the local community and some of the political activities going on to address it with the governor and our insurance commissioner. But this is just the beginning of a long effort that started a couple of years ago. For some of us who were on the front end of this, was watching what went on in Santa Rosa and started really, starting to analyze what the trends were. And then when we had a campfire up in Butte County in Paradise, it really set the tone for what's to come in a lot of areas if we don't take action. So we're going to have a lot more discussion on that, but I did want people to recognize that you can go on a website and find out what your current tier rating is as posted. I want to give you that website, because this is the guidebook the PG&E put out that shows you the threat risks. But the website, which is Cal OES, is www.myhazards, myhazards.caloes.ca.gov. And it gives you the ability to put in your personal address residence. You put that in, pardon? Can you repeat that? Yeah, it's www.myhazards.caloes.ca.gov. And so for my particular residence, it came back as Tier 1, and that's what the map that the PG&E is distributing associated with what CAL FIRE, I think, put together. This is a CPUC map. So there's CPUC maps, there's CAL FIRE maps, there's Cal OES maps, there's different information out there. But the one I really liked was when you can go on a website and look it up for your specific address. It'll tell you, in their definition, at least Cal OES, whether you're Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. Because I personally will make arguments with my insurance carrier if they come and try to cancel my policy after many, many years, given the fact that I live in a Tier 1 designated area. So we can always argue whether Tier 1 is correct or not, but that's what the Cal OES says. So I just want to make people aware of
our website.
Pardon?
So mediatefire.com, it's on the bottom banner. You can click on it, and it'll take you to that as well.
Okay.
It's the second way if you can't find it on the OES map. And that takes you straight to the map, which is the PG&E public safety power shutoff, Tier 1, 2, and 3 maps.
So you can look on a map or you can look up the address. I looked on the map first of all and said, well, I'm Tier 1. Okay, I verified that. But within 95762, there's Tier 2 and a little bit of Tier 3 because you're moving out towards rescue.
Yep, definitely.
And so if they do it by zip code, that's unfair to have a few properties in Tier 3 and everybody gets compromised. So that's the kind of message I think we need to send to the governor and then the Department of Insurance and stuff to make sure that they understand what some of these insurance companies are doing. So there's going to be a lot more, I think, in the next 6 months to a year on all of this. It's not going to be a quick battle, but people need to be aware of the fact that they're having cancellations in El Dorado Hills and start educating yourself and looking at alternatives. The worst case scenario, presumably, although I'm not sure it's worst case, is they have a program that California State operates called CalFare. But I've been told some of those insurance rates are 4 to 6 times what people were paying before. So yes, you can get fire insurance, but it's a separate rider on your insurance policy, so you still have to buy homeowners on top of whatever that special fire insurance coverage is. So there's a lot of different options. That's one a few people have been forced to take. I guess it's a CalFare program, but a lot of people have made the statement it's anything but fair. So just be aware of it. Follow the news media. Do some of your own research if you can, and
John,
try to educate yourself. Yes.
And also,
you want to come up here, Mo?
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps we all tie in a little bit more on that subject because it doesn't seem like the large companies are doing that broad brush. It's really more the smaller companies that are doing that, and that's likely because they're trying to reduce that portfolio, that risk in a particular area. There has been instances where citizens have called the fire department, been able to send folks out, do an inspection on their property, answer a few questions with respect to the closest fire station, the closest hydrant, the water on your property, and they've been teaming that and actually got their policies renewed. So I don't think there's a large-scale broad brush, especially some of the larger insurance companies, but those smaller companies with significant risk, they are starting to pay away.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. I've been in insurance for over 20 years. Always on IT. I don't handle policies or anything, but I know as soon as there's a fire anyplace in the state, I'm getting probably about 40 emails from carriers. Moratorium. No policies, no changes. And that lasts typically until after fires are gone. And then usually after fires are gone through, if you're a long-time policyholder, you'll see your rates go up. And if you're not a long-term policyholder, they'll probably start dropping. And they'll just want to left to renew the coverage. So the fair plan, as John said, is a plan of last resort. The premiums are high, the limits are not great, the coverage is not great. But if you need something to satisfy your mortgage or just to satisfy your own well-being, that's the option.
There's a lot of stories about people not being able to sell their homes. People who want to get out of the area because of the high fire risk and stuff. And the homes fall through an escrow or even before when people find out where they are and the fact that they're tier 3 or tier 2 properties and you can't get fire insurance coverage at a reasonable rate. The answer is I'm not buying that piece of property and they're moving on. So there is a long-term significant potential for high impacts in all rural counties, particularly El Dorado County, with respect to property values declining substantially, property tax assessments to pay for all of our special district functions in the county and stuff diminishing substantially. And very quickly, this could go into a tailspin where we don't have the funding to provide services, primarily because those property values have dropped so much, and people are being forced to leave. And in some cases, it may mean homelessness, because some people in fixed incomes and certain situations probably have nowhere to go if they're forced out of their home. And if it's at really extreme high risk, maybe that's the only alternative they have. So more to come on it, but I did want to make sure. And thank you, Chief Johnston, for sharing the information on that. So, any questions on that one? Okay, yes.
Well, I hope I don't get anything from it. I happen to actually experience this quite a bit. I actually happen to be in the insurance industry, and I've seen this disruption. It continues to occur. It's going to continue to occur. And the tier structure is correct, but they'll also take it a step further. And so that's why our friends at the fire department become incredibly important, because they will, each carrier will underwrite the risk differently. They will assign, within that tiered system, they will assign what is called a fire line score, which is made up of ceramic brush, access to the property, the slope of the property, also basically what mitigation do you have nearby.
Hydrant across the street, fire station,
water supply, if you don't have a hydrant.
Response time to the property. All those will generate an overall score, and that's how it is basically each property is rated its own separate way. If you guys want more information, I'd be more than happy to share it with you, because there is a strategy to it, and I feel as though that I can help with you countering issues.
So Mike, why don't you identify yourself, since you're also an elected official there locally, so.
Yeah, so I actually am elected to the UHCSD board director, so here to kind of curious to see what's going on, and if anyone has any concerns whatsoever about anything as to what you'd like to see within our community, please feel free to come and see me. Love to hear from you.
Thanks for attending this evening. Very good. Okay, I'm going to move on. The third item is the county 2018-19 grand jury report. And there is a full grand jury report out that's been published now. It's out on the website. We have copies of it in our office. We can send you a link to it if you want to, but I wanted to just highlight one of the significant ones because I think the Mental Health Services Act provisions and some of the things going on, which we have discussed at our Behavioral Health Commission meetings on an ongoing basis, is significant. So I wanted to share with you just briefly the findings and the recommendations that came from this last grand jury. And like I said, there's other subjects the grand jury has looked at. If you have a particular interest, we can talk about those, but this one I thought hit a broader spectrum of people. So their findings: underspending of MHSA funds is a statewide issue, although a few counties have managed to fully utilize funds provided under this program. So El Dorado County has historically underspent our Mental Health Services Act funds, which means they revert and go back to the state. Second finding: the county's MHSA project team has taken some actions to minimize the risk of reversion of MHSA funds. Reversion is when it has to go back to the state. The third finding: there are systemic and persistent issues in hiring and retaining county mental health employees that impact the timely expenditure of MHSA funds. And we do have a staffing issue in several of our Health and Human Services Act, or Health and Human Services Organization. So this is just a continuing category of not being able to stay at full staffing in many cases. The fourth finding, the El Dorado County budgeting philosophy puts county MHSA funds at risk of reversion. So what they're saying is the budgeting approach that we take gives us a high likelihood of sending money back to the state. So ongoing discussions as to how to turn that around. The county's contracting procedures are complex and time-consuming, and that's certainly a given. This allows less time for contractors to assist staff in developing and implementing programs, putting county MHSA funds at risk of reversion. So those were their findings, the 5 findings they had. They came back with 3 recommendations, and I think the recommendations are probably the more important part. But number 1 recommendation: the county should contact counties who have been successful in spending MHSA funds in a timely manner to determine if there are best practices that might be used to better utilize MHSA funds. And the county has taken on an activity of trying to look at best practices in many areas. We've talked about that. We'll continue to request that staff look at the ways of looking at how well we're doing versus other counties. If they have some kind of a novel program, some kind of an incentivized program, whatever it may be, that's been successful, we need to look at taking that initiative and doing it in El Dorado County. So the second recommendation: the Chief Administrative Officer, the Director of Health and Human Services, the County Auditor Controller, and the Director of Human Resources should review county budgeting and personnel philosophies, strategies, and procedures to ensure that these administrative functions fully support the timely expenditure of MHSA funds. And I can tell you that's happening too, because we're starting to look at the whole budgeting process at the county and trying to get to the point of what's really important versus what are some of the, I'll say, traditional things that have been done in the past that may be less important, to try to streamline the budgeting process. So I've been supporting that kind of an activity and actually looking at the whole annual budgeting process and making changes that will help provide information that's accurate, but also focus on how do we make sure that we don't lose monies that come to us through state funding or federal funding because we don't have staffing or something else. So we need contingency plans, etc. The third recommendation, the final one: the Chief Administrative Officer, the Director of Health and Human Services, the County Auditor Controller, and the Procurement and Contracts Division Purchasing Agent should review county contracting strategies and procedures to ensure that these administrative functions fully support the timely expenditure of MHSA funds. Now, when the grand jury puts out one of these reports, the county is obligated to make a response. That's what we don't have yet, is the response to the recommendations. So staff will go through and they will draft responses to each of the findings and recommendations as to whether they agree, disagree, partially agree, etc. And then what's going to happen in terms of the recommendations. So my guess is within the next 60 days, this one will probably come before the Board of Supervisors for approval. There's already been one of the grand jury reports that came to the Board of Supervisors, and we modified the response as a board because we didn't feel it gave enough information in terms of some of the work that was really going on. So that was done at a board meeting, by decisions and a vote of the Board of Supervisors. So this would likewise be, the responses would be subject to the Board of Supervisors approving the official response that the county submits to the grand jury. So for any of those of you that are interested in that, I just want to make you aware of that. The grand jury process is an interesting one. They're always seeking volunteers. Is there anybody in here who's ever served on the grand jury? Anybody? Okay. I've talked to several people that have, and I guess it's a very rewarding experience and somewhat an eye-opener for a lot of people who get to better understand how county policies and how the state law works. So if you have some idle time and are interested in that, I'd recommend you look into volunteering for the grand jury. The next one, the Placerville Junior Hall closure and repurposing. Most of you have probably seen an announcement that the Placerville Juvenile Hall facility has been closed. All of the youth that were at that facility have been moved to South Lake Tahoe, which has enough adequate beds and stuff. Ultimately, we want to move them back when a new facility is built in Placerville. So there's some timelines. We're looking at 3 or 4 years before a new facility would be built in Placerville. And the current expectation is that the South Lake Tahoe facility would be shut down and repurposed. So a new facility that's modern, fully has all the accommodations required by state law, all those kinds of things would be built and to basically serve as our singular county-wide juvenile facility. So in the interim, we have a facility that's 30-ish years old that we're looking at 3 different options, and staff is going through some of those, but one of them is look at it as a mental health facility. One of them is look at it basically selling the property and having some buyer come in and use it. And the third option is possibly repurposing it for a homeless shelter. So people who have heard some of that story have already started inputs. It's way too early in the process really to get into any kind of a detailed discussion about some kind of a study or analysis that defines the preferred use of that facility. Just know that those studies are going to go on, and when staff has completed their studies, then we'll make them public and people can start weighing in on where they believe the best use of that aged facility, but it's still in a usable condition, might be repurposed. So make you aware of that. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Really just a comment from the fire service perspective, the EMS perspective, mental health facilities and lack thereof has a significant impact on our abilities to serve this community. There's only 8 ambulances in the entire county, and so for us to be able to maintain the high level of service we have, we're challenged every day. We have to go to San Francisco, Santa Rosa, San Jose to transport mental health patients. That's a challenge of taking the ambulance out of service for 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah, totally agree. And there has been a hybrid proposal out there that since there's 2 separable parts, that maybe one part of it would be mental health and one part of it would be homeless sheltering. I don't know how compatible they are, how it would ever work out, but there's always permutations and commutations of whatever the particular proposal. But those 3 are going to be looked at, and maybe some combination will be looked at. But no, I hear you.
Mental health directly.
Right. Yep. Okay. So again, more information to come on that some later. There is one. Actually, one item I wanted to add, and that just came in recently, that a resident of El Dorado Hills, John Thompson, who is part of the Black Action Committee, for those of you who know Black and stuff, has been very involved with a lot of community activities for many, many years, particularly in the Bass Lake area. He just received an Award of Merit as an honor scholastic category from the Conference of California Historical Societies. So the Black newsletter is out, and so I wanted to just recognize John for his great accomplishment. He wrote a very historically oriented book about the history of Bass Lake and how it got started during the mining days, the storage of water to use basically the ditches to bring water down to the miners, how it ultimately was reverted to a fishing resort by a guy who purchased the rights to it out of Sacramento and had a lot of people come up here and fish, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a whole spectrum of just good historical information on the history of Bass Lake and how it's evolved to be what it is today that most of us that live in this community a long time don't even know a part of what's in there. But when you read it, I think it's very interesting to understand that part of the history, particularly when it's something as local as Bass Lake is. It's very recognizable. So I want to commend John for his award and make sure he got recognition for that. The last thing, and then I'm going to get off the stage here, is I did want to make a public announcement that I am intending to seek re-election for a second term as Board of Supervisors. I'm planning on having an official kickoff event probably in early August. Just trying to figure out how to properly do that. And several people have asked, and now that we're past the month of June, because those of you who have never had to contend with FPPC reporting, it's a semi-annual process. So now if I received a donation, a contribution towards my campaign, I could report it in the July to December time frame as opposed to have submitted in May or June. And I don't like that paperwork, so that's one of the reasons I delayed until July to make this announcement. And then, like I said, it'll be a more formal announcement and a kickoff event or something like that coming up. So just wanted to share that with everyone, since I have had several questions raised. The timing was right tonight to do it, July 1st, so we're there. And with that, I'm ready to get off the stage and go to our reports, unless anybody had a question. Yeah, Glenn.
Just real quick, John, what's your gut feeling on the extra 6 cents per gallon? Is the county going to get any more money for our roads? Just a gut feeling.
No, not without certain things that the governor is now using kind of as ransom for counties to receive additional monies. One of which they said is if you are a self-help county, and they're currently defining self-help as basically approving a sales tax revenue source to go strictly to roads. So if you're self-help in that capacity, the state would provide more money. The most recent one I've seen is they've talked about possibly holding up monies for various things like transportation if the housing needs assessment are not met in terms of defining properties suitable for affordable housing. So there's a number of things out there, and I'll call it the threat category. I'm not sure how realistic they are, but there is no immediate way to be able to recognize additional revenues from that SB1 tax, even though we're all paying, as of today, another 5.7 cents or something, rather 5.7 cents a gallon for gasoline tax. I don't see the county seeing any near-term additional revenues as a result of that. It's sad.
What can we see being refurbished this year in our roads in town? Do you have streets already picked out?
Yeah, they've been identified with the SB1 funds. The most notable and the most significant one what is out in Lake Hills. They're doing a complete overlay out there, and that was announced by the Board of Supervisors and stuff probably 6 or 9 months ago. We did have an overlay for El Dorado Boulevard planned.
Next year, right?
Next year. So it was planned for this year originally, and it got deferred for a year. So it's planned to start up next year, as I understand it. Always subject to change, but there are a few projects that have been identified for the SB1 funds, very near-term things. And what they typically use is the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, to look at what are the worst communities in terms of road deterioration, and then pick those, because I know if you looked at Lake Hills, some of those roadways are like 25, 30, 35, and a PCI up to 100. I mean, they're just totally falling apart. There's other roads like that, but as a subdivision, it was probably the worst and most neglected subdivision, at least in my opinion, of anything in El Dorado Hills. There's a lot of neglected subdivisions in El Dorado Hills, but that was the worst. So I'm hoping others will start seeing monies come forward in future years for that purpose as SB1 funds are received. So we'll share that information as the DOT makes their proposals and we get definition of it. Okay, with that, I am going to turn it over to our leadership team. And I want to start with Rob Smith, since our CHP representative is here this evening, and we'll let him get started on public safety stuff, and then we'll move through the agenda. So, Rob, welcome.
Thank you, sir. So I'll use my freeway voice instead of the microphone. I like to pace around anyways. So, just since last time I was here, we've had 2 more fatals on our roadways in El Dorado County. I know we talked about the one on Bass Lake that happened a few days before the last meeting. County recently went out there for, it was actually pre-planned prior to, and they did a high friction surface treatment in that curve there on Bass Lake. And I don't know if you've driven on it yet, but you can really get some good traction.
I had a question about that, Ross.
Yeah.
Because they haven't repainted it yet, centerline.
They're working on that.
Okay.
It's a project, because that's not the only road they're doing right now.
I know, yeah.
They're doing several of them. So.
And I think there's a sign package that the Board of Supervisors approved. It was a grant that came in, or that's where I heard. It was a grant about some additional signage. I think that was one of the intersections that was identified that could use it, but I don't know if it's...
I can't speak to that.
Okay. I'll just say that without that line, as I come to the curves, 4 people pass me, 4 people are over that line. You know, you drive it, so.
Yeah, and I drive it almost every day because I live off of Bass Lake.
You're right there. You mean,
so a couple different, we We have double the amount of fatals we had this time last year. We had 25 all of last year, and we're at 20 already, with 22 dead. And so it was 25 and 27 last year, and we're seeing an upward tick every single year. Problem is we can't point to any specific cause. There were several that were not wearing their safety equipment, not wearing seatbelts, and most likely would have survived had they been wearing seatbelts. Speed is always a factor. You know, I do our social media, so I'll post stuff like on speed details and things, and then people want to start talking about, well, it's the slow drivers. Well, it's everybody. Okay, people driving too slow, people driving too fast. You're all on the roads together. So it's a matter of everybody being cognizant of what's going on. In this particular area, one thing we've noticed is we've been getting a lot of red light runners at Latrobe and White Rock, and leading to a lot of collisions. The county's doing the right thing. Their signal timing is good, everything's good. People are just taking those extra chances. I got a guy just last week running a red light down there a full second after I had green. He blows right through, right in front of me. I always hesitate when I get green. Always. And you should too. I always hesitate at greens. I never go immediately. And that's why. I happen to be a missionary for a particular religion, and he tried to get out of the ticket. And I said, you can kill somebody just the same as a non-believer. So, here's your red light ticket. As far as, you know, DUI crashes, this county, I think I mentioned this last time, per capita, we're tied with San Diego County for the most DUI collisions in the state. Again, there's no patterns, they're all over the place. So it's an issue of, I mean, we're out there educating, we try our best to make those stops. I'm an instructor in DUI and drugs, and I've taught a lot of the sheriff's deputies and Placerville PD and Red Hawk and all of them to increase the amount of training in DUI we have in this county to hopefully take more people off the roadways. An update from the last meeting, there were a couple of problem roadways that were brought up. Crown Village. Went out there a couple times, put the radar trailer out there. That one, the times that I was sitting out there, I didn't see a ton of traffic, so it's kind of hard to justify to continue going out there. There is a problem, I don't doubt it, people should cut through there. But to take and spend a lot of time on many occasions is difficult to justify. But it's a road that has been noted and will be visited again in the future. I don't just write them off. I got an email about a cut through Moss Ridge and all that. I went out, I talked to the complainant. We had a conversation for a while. The cut throughs I know are an issue. Coming from Folsom, people come through the neighborhoods. It's hard for me to sit there in black and white and see it. Because they see the black and white, they slow down. Guess what? They're going to go slow through your neighborhood for however long I'm out there, and then they're going to go right back to doing what they were doing. The problem is some of these roadways are not signed with speed signs. If there's no speed sign on a roadway, it's technically 55 miles an hour. And that's difficult. Now, that particular road, it's impossible to go 55 miles an hour on that road without them crashing because it's probably only about a football field long. But people are whipping around the corners. So that's an issue, people cutting through. I did visit that. We put a radar trailer on the next street over that is signed, just to kind of catch some of that traffic. We've had our senior volunteers out as well. You can't tell the difference most of the time because they drive black and white just like we do. And they put volunteer in the back window, and the back window is tinted, so unless you're looking, you have to look, and you have to look at the person in the car. So we're utilizing them as well to go out there and have that visible presence. Yes.
Speed bump.
Not in this county. And speed bumps, honestly, one, they're extremely costly, and they're not as effective as you might think in certain cases. So it ends up being more of an impediment to us than it is really slowing down the street. Because then people want to bounce over on then the maintenance. You're already talking about having to fix certain roads, now you have to put speed bumps in.
That said, in a gated community and stuff, there are provisions the fire department has defined to do traffic calming things, not necessarily speed bumps, but things that a study can be done, can be approved. So within residential gated communities, there is an option to go through the fire department and get something done. But for our county maintained streets, for the highways, no.
But not as a first resort. Push that down the road.
Yep.
Yeah, there's better options. Better options to stop to speed bumps. Yes, sir.
I just recently moved to the area here, and in observation, I've seen a number of CHP units periodically, but I've also seen a little sheriff. Who's the primary responder for 911 for great law enforcement?
Both. We share jurisdiction. We do everything traffic, and they do everything else. So house calls, crimes in progress, trespassing, things like that. We handle everything having to do with the vehicle.
So just who is in proximity to the call?
Well, no, it's, so 911 call comes in, if it's a traffic collision or some type of traffic matter, it gets routed to us. If it's something else, it gets routed to the sheriff.
But I think it's CHP dispatch that answers the original 911 calls, and then they disseminate.
Depends on where you are.
Okay, all right.
So if you are in close proximity to Highway 50, it goes to our dispatch. If you're in the outer lying areas, this is cell phones. Outer lying areas will go to the sheriff's office.
Okay, good to know.
So I'm just trying to think of the ratios to population here. So I come from Roseville, and so up here, what's the ratio per officer on the populace side?
So we typically have 2 CHP officers in the El Dorado Hills area most of the time, except at nighttime, and it's obviously less. I can't speak for the sheriff's department. I want to say they have probably equal amount.
They mix it up. They don't tell the exact numbers, but 3 to 5 is the typical number I've heard in the past. I mean, if they're called out on something, yeah, they're going to go to a response, where they're required to go, and there will be an absence of officers for some period of time. But that's typically the number they talk about. But they move around their patterns depending upon the trends they're seeing and the statistics they keep. So the data we collect.
Right, and we're similar.
Yeah.
But we have our set beats, and there's at least 2 that are assigned out this way. And then I'm the community officer, so I go to trouble spots. I don't have a specific beat responsibility. So I might be in El Dorado Hills for a whole day, or I might be somewhere else. West County typically takes most of my attention, just because of population. So, yes.
Do you see cell phones and texting as being an issue with the increased number of accidents that you've been seeing?
Absolutely, but it's hard to prove.
Yeah.
Because if you just get in a fender bender, I can't look at your phone unless you let me look at your phone. So really, unless a felony has been committed, and I can do a search warrant, because I can't do a search warrant for a misdemeanor violation. If a felony was committed, then I could do a search warrant, get your phone records, and be able to tell if you were on your phone somewhat around that time. There's other indicators that we can look for. The phone's open, it's on, right in the middle of the text conversation, it's laying on the ground. Seen that. But yes, absolutely. And the funny thing about the distracted driving is they did a study to show if hands-free versus handheld, which was better. The stats are the same. It's the same. It does not matter if you are using it in your hand or using it hands-free. You are just as
So it's the
distracted.
attention. The attention's on the phone, whether you're holding it or whether you're just talking.
Yes, and they've done studies where if you so much as put your phone on a table, you are going to be distracted by the fact that that phone is there.
That's interesting.
So we tell people, just, you know what, put it away. Put it in your purse, put it in the glove box, turn it off so you don't hear it. And there's a lot of safety features available. Yes?
I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. Do you see a correlation between DUI and people leaving the 80 casinos?
No, that's actually kind of a myth that's propagated out there. They say, I've heard it several times, oh, it's the casino, so many DUIs from the casino. Honestly, a lot of our DUIs are people drinking at their house. I mean, I'd say that's probably the majority of them. They're drinking at home or a friend's house. They're not necessarily drinking in an establishment. They're running out for another case of beer or going from one place to another. Maybe they're going home, maybe going to a friend's house. And that's a lot of them. We've also seen a big uptick in drug DUI. Last year we were about 50-50 in DUI, alcohol and drugs. The majority of the drug picture was marijuana. And they're showing that there is a correlation between legalized marijuana and an increase in fatal collisions. So we've been seeing it a lot in our fatal collisions.
And some citations are both, right? I mean, there's been drinking and use of drugs.
Right.
But then again, a period of time, both.
Yeah, we had a fatal last year that he had I think 4 different drugs in his system, and he was like a 1.5. So he only killed himself. So one thing I would like to pass is being a social media guy. Be wary of the things that you see on social media. People put stuff out there on Nextdoor, on Facebook, and they make a huge deal. We've all seen, how many of you are on social media? How many of you seen the I smell smoke post? Or what's up with the helicopter? Right? And then everybody's just like compounds and it gets really, really bad. That kind of thing ends up happening for the traffic issues. We had a fatal accident 2 weeks ago on 49 just north of the Amador County line. The guy that caused it has a horrible past, known drug user, on probation, just not a good guy, right? Bad record. We don't look at cases like that based upon who they are. We have to evaluate it by what it is at the time that it happens, the evidence that we have. This guy was completely clean. He was following everything by his probation, what his probation officer was telling him to do. I know that because his probation officer is my brother-in-law. This guy was going to NA meetings several times a week. He was trying to do the right thing, and he made a poor decision trying to avoid another vehicle and went head on with another car and killed the woman. And it's very unfortunate. But when it got put out on social media, everybody's like, he wasn't supposed to be out there, he's probably high, he's doing this, he's doing this. All the speculation doesn't help anything because we're going to conduct our investigation. So just be wary of things like that. That gossip gets out there. The Red Hawk thing, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that is a common thing that's put out there. Red Hawk just produces all of these DUI drivers. The security there is top notch, I will say that. We get all kinds of good stuff from them, and they're extremely cooperative with us and the Sheriff's Department. Excellent. So they're actually very good partners for law enforcement in this county. So, any other questions I can answer since I'm here? I can't stick around to the end. I gotta get up super early.
It just seems like there's a lot of angry people behind the wheel now, and it's just the wrong place to be. You shouldn't be driving a 2-ton vehicle if you're mad. I mean, El Dorado Hills Boulevard, they fly by you and they flip you off, and you're going like 40 miles an hour. Does it seem like people are madder when they're driving now? They're just more upset.
I agree with you. Yes. It's unfortunate.
It's not just kids either. It's not just high school kids. That's another misconception.
Yes,
Everyone likes high school.
absolutely. It's not the Flatlanders coming up here, although, yes, it is. But it's not just them. We'd love to say that. Those of us that lived up here for a while, we'd love to say that. It's the Flatlanders. Right? It's all of us. It's all of us. And you know what? Is it worth it? I mean, really, you could drive down the road and a guy accidentally cuts you off. Do you need to tailgate him and flip him off and flash your high beams and do all that? Why? Because now you're angry too. Or if that somebody gets angry with you and you engage with them, now you're both angry. And they won because they got you to engage. So I'd rather just ignore it. You know what? Do your thing. Go ahead. Go ahead and speed past me. Let the highway patrol get them. Cool. On that note, stay on the left lane unless you're passing people. It just helps with traffic flow. Yep. We're not talking about allowing people to speed, but when I'm trying to go to an emergency call, when they're trying to go to an emergency call, and we're stuck behind a whole line of 15, 20 cars in the left lane because we can't get through traffic, that person way at the front can't see us. So that's what it's really about. Keeping that traffic flowing. Yeah.
I don't know if you can answer this, but on Sophia Parkway, there's 4 new stop lights that are been built out. They're covered with cardboard or something. Do you know when they're going to be activated and up and running?
I don't.
It's actually Empire Ranch Road. It's the city Folsom owns a portion of the Sophia Empire Ranch Road.
Okay.
And there has been discussions about what may happen with that, but there's no definitive dates that I've heard, but they are getting poised to go ahead and activate those signals. And the big thing we're waiting for is the opening of Saratoga to Iron Point to hopefully minimize when they have to move that forward, because if that re-diverts a lot of the traffic going through the DLR show, Knollwood, whatever the cutoff is. You are on one end, the DLR show is the other end. Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens with all of that. They're in place, and someday they will be active. It's just a question of what's the trigger point.
Yes, sir.
Just one last question. This is a prior question. From our view, we're in Dorado, and I'm looking at Bass Lake TV, and I recall 5 to 6 ambulances or responding units that were right at Strong Parkway at Bass Lake. And when evening, we were calling the event for the units to respond. Or the Stevensons,
Yeah, I don't know specifically the date and time you're talking about, but there is an engine company located on Bass Lake Road, and so there's frequently, as they're responding through that intersection, would be a frequent route of travel for them.
Yeah, they don't have the lights on. You're all going into that intersection. Going up the hill.
Station 86 is on that side road, so if you're going kind of north.
What is it?
Yeah, fire station is right there, so any call they would get, that would be a frequent route of travel, or maybe that was one of the events. And then depending on the call type, we would send multiple resources, so there have been multiple units going to the same call.
Like a burning patrol car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it your car?
No, it's not my car. It was my post though.
I saw the car.
I was sitting in the stands at Sonoma Raceway watching NASCAR doing that.
Okay, Rob, I want to thank you again
All right.
for sharing information. I don't think there's anybody here from the Sheriff's Department this evening, as we normally allow the Sheriff's Department to also give a report. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Lilly, and he can update us with any fire information that's key in.
Sure, yeah, and I'll keep it brief, looking at your time, but I guess a couple notes. I know that City of Folsom and Sacramento County allows safe and sane fireworks, you'll see the stanza, but if you're here in El Dorado County, they are completely illegal everywhere, whether they're safe and sane or any other type. So if you do see people out there, especially in our community with the vegetation we have, that's a worthy call 911. So get that reported if you see that going on. We know we're ramping up for the 3rd of July event in the town center. Generally, we have like 25,000 people that flood into that town center and the surrounding streets. And so just a point to know is that that show has changed slightly this year in that they're building the new apartment building inside the town center across from Sellers. So that changed the type of show they're going to be putting on. So you're viewing, basically the shells of what they're firing off aren't going to go as high. So we're expecting like 100-ish feet in the air versus maybe 300 feet. So there's a big difference in the viewing, and you're going to see that play out this year. It hasn't been well advertised. So basically they're going to launch from 2 barges on the water, one on each side of the bridge, and for the bridge itself. So if you're attending the town center event, just be aware of that. It's going to create a different type of show, but it's something that should be sustainable in the long run. So from our perspective, besides that and getting ready for the 3rd of July, it's definitely summertime, and we're finishing up our vacant lot programs and just getting aggressive, getting out there with training and being ready for the summer activities. Any questions for fire department that we have?
Can you speak about the weed abatement issue with not being able to get contractors out
Yes.
there asking for it? Because I've seen a lot of lots that need to be still abated with weeds, and they haven't been yet. We're already in July, right? So
Definitely. So we're working on finishing up. If somebody doesn't clear their property after we notice them, we generally will have a contractor come in relatively quickly. We'll go ahead and clear the lot for them, and then when they pay their taxes, we lien them. One situation we've encountered this year is that two parts. One is there's not a lot of contractors that are available to work. There's obviously a demand that's been created by all the activities and fires and vegetation policies and everything going on statewide. But combined with that issue is the cost of doing the abatement for what we traditionally would experience. I mean, it's more than 4 times what we've seen in the past, right, Chief? I mean, you freaked out the other day when you heard the price. But we're committed to doing what we need to do to figure it out. It certainly is a complication just in finding contractors, and you're talking massive cost increases. So obviously, there's a huge demand for this type of work right now. Yes, sir.
Mike, offhand, there will be parking up at the district church on the hill above the Regal Theater, which is a great viewpoint.
Sure.
And the parking up there is free, and then they have a movie afterwards, so you don't have to jump in your car and run home real quick if you got kids or grandkids, whatever.
Right.
Or something along with it.
Any other questions, fire department wise, Chief? You have anything you want to add? Or?
No, you have a great point on it. Just finding enough contractors. It's not just us. It's kind of a statewide issue. But for instance, our cost went from $25,000 to abate the properties to over $300,000. So people feel they can charge what they want. If you want the business, then you're going to pay. So it's not just individually; it's the fire department as well.
And so part of that is the El Dorado Hills Fire Department's policy on vacant lot abatement.
Exactly.
Part of it's probably the county's vegetation management ordinance. They kind of work hand in hand, but you're going to see more and more of that because we really do have to get defensible space for all the residences, throughout the county, but particularly El Dorado Hills is our current focus. So you're going to see more and more. And it's unfortunate, but supply and demand determines price. When there's a huge demand and a very limited supply, the price is going to go way out of sight. That's where we are at this point in time. So thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to move on then beyond public safety, and we'll go right down the line. So John, you want to talk about APAC?
Okay, so next Wednesday, 7 o'clock in this building. July 10th, we'll be meeting here. Initially, we thought we were going to have sort of a light agenda, and it's still a little bit light. We're hoping to have the agenda finalized and out to everybody on Wednesday. The one thing we will be talking about, of course, is Costco. We attended the stakeholder meeting last Monday. There's some significant changes, some concerns about the traffic, and Supervisor Heidel had suggested there's going to be a lot of environmental review work involved in that. We're challenged with the fact that there's still no plan. So it's concept only, and it's not official until they make that application. And compounding that, as we discussed earlier, EDA 52 is intending to put both those pieces together, their project and the Costco project, and try to put those traffic impact analysis together, which makes some sense because they really do, they're hand in hand, they do impact each other. But we'll see how ready one project is, one project isn't. So hopefully we'll have some more information. We have a few more images we can share at the meeting on that. The other thing that we're going to talk about as a notification item is a conditional use permit for the EID treatment plant. We intend to move the Bassett treatment plant facilities to the bigger plant down at Latrobe Road. So that is, some county planners are looking at that. We'll just address it real quickly. We have a quick update about the Sienna Ridge Shopping Center, the new Safeway is going in at Bass Lake and Sienna Ridge Road, Toronto Parkway. They announced last week about 9 tenants that they've signed leases on. And I kind of knew about some of those for a while, but it's official. They released it in Business Journal. So we'll talk about that a little bit and sort of the timelines that they envision for construction and when some of those things might be done. We have another quick update. It was an agenda item that was on the Board of Supervisors agenda on the 25th regarding the contract with a law firm that handles a lot of the environmental projects, some general plan changes and things like that. And it's been amended about 5 previous times, and so the board went ahead and they are creating a new contract essentially, specifically looking at the specific plans for Central Elder Hills, the Village of Marble Valley, and Lime Rock, and that was just it's just an update regarding the changes in that contract's official as of July 1st. And then right now that's the highlights. There might be a little bit more. Come out and see us. We start at 7. We record the meetings at 3 meetings, and we really need resident input because that's what our focus is all about. So there's no questions about it those ways.
I think it's July 10th.
Yes.
Okay. So, good governance.
Good governance. I'm going to really slim down what I have to say because of the title tonight. But the county has, since about 2014, pursued the notion of a strategic plan relative to how it's going to assess and focus its resources. And periodically, they have had formal review processes of the needs that need to go into it. And I think from what was discussed tonight, the different kinds of issues and crises that arise, you can certainly conceive how what you might have planned in 2014 is going to be definitely impacted by what's going on today. In March, the county hosted described as a public meeting to assess the current demands and needs as envisioned by the public. I attended. My personal observation, frankly, it was very much dominated by public agencies, public employees, non-governmental organizations, and maybe because of the timing and the notice, the general public, people who were kind of unaffiliated but interested, the timing wasn't good. And but in the June 11th Board of Supervisors meeting, the Chief Administrative Officer, John Ashton, basically presented the accumulation and the analysis of the data from that March meeting. And I would have to say that in listening to the presentation to the Board of Supervisors, it was a well engaged activity. I think very serious effort was taken to listen to the different ideas that came up. But fundamentally, that more or less verified that the main goals and themes that the county is pursuing are substantially the same. Public safety and infrastructure, which generally means roads, are the two critical things that most of the public is concerned about. Public safety has been given a broader concept, I think, than it has in the past, and is viewed in the various aspects of our society, be it health and welfare, aging, mental health, and how those things impact upon the general well-being and the public safety within the county. I think one of the things that I found good was the several different representatives of the different county departments all saw the serious need to listen to one another and to avail themselves to one another when they have objectives that blend together. And to me, it sounds like reasonable and considerate thought that is going into how we are governing. I think it's a very good process. I think there are certain things that get prioritized that not everybody would always agree with, but I would say generally I do see that the effort is being made, and one of the dilemmas, and it was made by the supervisors during the presentation by the Chief Administrative Officer, there's all these things that would be great to do, but there's not that much money to do them all. And so how the budget ultimately impacts on what the priorities will get advanced and what others will have to be addressed later. It's late, but I think there is your general presentation.
Very good.
Supervisor Heidel and I have been updated. The biggest project going on now is the Saratoga Estates project.
which is going to connect, so we talked earlier about it, Saratoga to Iron Point. So the latest schedule is that that connection is going to be made. It's a lot more complex, you know, with the bridges and everything and the grading and so forth. It's going to be in November. That connection is going to be made. And but the good news is that they're going to get the Wilson connection done in I believe it's in September. So it's coming, and we mentioned Town Center Apartments. They're working on the garage, the parking garage portion right now, so that's moving along as well. That's about it.
So we get monthly updates now on the schedule, so we should be getting another monthly update for July. Originally, they talked about September for Saratoga's way, but when you look at the schedule, what I see is November, so there may be a partial opening and a final completion. I mean, I didn't read that in the schedule, but it's definitely in the September to November timeframe for both of those roadways to be open. More information when we get the updated schedule, but they are making progress. If you've seen the contractors out there and all the earth moving and everything else, they're moving a lot of soil and doing a lot of bridge work and other things. Bridges basically and a lot of other road infrastructure.
Well, we had some significant delays with the unseasonable rain that we had.
Yep.
So that was the reason I pushed it right back to
Very good. Economic development. Okay.
Is it economic or economic?
Economic.
Everybody's changing how we pronounce that now. I'm still an economic guy. First of all, Supervisor Heidel asked me to make this announcement and explain this a little bit. Just so everybody knows, this did not come out of CDAC, the committee that I'm a part of. This came out of economic development at the county, and they have their staff, and they're the staff that supports what we do. But the county has signed a consulting contract with John Kruger of the National Real Estate Market Advisors Group to establish a countywide business retention and expansion program, because they really don't have one. The state doesn't have one either, by the way. The county's requested an in-depth analysis of the economic climate in our region in order to help attract, retain, and expand businesses. In addition to retention and expansion, the county is interested in developing a finance and incentive tool and a marketing outreach program to engage current and prospective businesses. So they've identified 5 tasks for the consultant. The 5th one is the first one I'll address, which is the other task. So that's any other issues they decide they might want to add on. But the primary of the 4, the first one is the Business Retention and Expansion Program. The consultant will work with county staff to review policy issues and develop approaches to create these new programs. They'll create surveys for targeted businesses. They will identify a target list of companies to survey. The goal will be to have the Business Retention and Expansion Program, a boilerplate survey, a company target list, a completed survey report, staff workshops completed within 6 months, and that's pretty much from this week, right?
Yep.
This is a new agreement. The second task is to develop and analyze new finance and incentive tools. The consultant will work with the county staff to identify existing and future finance and incentive tools that will accomplish this task. The task is not fully formed for a deliverable product, and the reason for that is dependent on research and then to see if the results are feasible. So this is kind of a wish item. The third task is to develop a marketing and business attraction outreach program. The county is looking to create a consistent message and brand image for our county. They would like to show El Dorado County as a business-friendly place. The fourth task is the business attraction program. The consultant will identify companies and influencers to target about their interest to locate to El Dorado County. The task will include targeting and face-to-face meetings with potential companies. It appears that they would like to have much of this completed in the next 6 months and then to continue this as an ongoing effort. I can share with you from my experience with GSEC, which is the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, which is a privately funded group, what other states are doing. What we don't do well as a state is we do not do economic development because the state is such a big economy as it is right now. I don't think they feel it's been important, but other states do. Texas has done a really good job of recruiting California businesses to relocate to Texas. That doesn't have a state tax, income tax. Colorado, Denver had tremendous growth. They did that through economic development. So some states, some cities have done a really good job, and they're starting to figure out now that that is something you need to do. And so our county has decided, with taking this step, to put a toe in the water and to see if we can make an impact. Because right now, when we have businesses look at El Dorado County, there isn't a really strong structure. The county chamber's involved. They may take them out and show them around the county and show them the great recreation we have. People from the county will meet with them. The supervisors will meet with them. Sometimes Supervisor Hyder will invite me to come in and meet with them as well. But it's all very ad hoc, and we don't really have a plan. So I think the idea is to do some analysis to see if we can create such a plan and what will happen. But along with that, also targeting certain companies to maybe start knocking on their doors and say, hey, look at us. We're here. We're a potential good place for you to either create additional workspace for additional workers or to move their headquarters here. So we'll see where it goes. It's new to me, something that I'm just learning about, but hopefully it's money that will be well spent and they can be a little bit better organized, maybe a little more professional in our approach to talk to some of these companies that do look at the county. Any questions?
And the big motivator for me is bring jobs to El Dorado County. That's one of the things we definitely need is jobs that people can be trained for, so that people can get off of Highway 50 and don't have to commute to Sacramento or Fairfield or the Bay Area. We can create good paying jobs in El Dorado County, and then particularly our youth can be trained and certified in certain skills and stay in El Dorado County and not have to leave because they can't find a job that pays a decent wage without long commutes. And we all know what's happening with the price of gasoline and commute costs. They're going way up. So some people get to the point, I can't afford to commute anymore, even though I can get 50% better pay if I drive downtown Sacramento. The cost of driving down, parking, or riding, transit, et cetera, are prohibitive. So you never want that as an answer. So we're trying to turn around some of the planning that we have available. Yes, Steve.
And one comment on that, and Steve, we have another question back here. Those of us who've raised children here and now have adult children, one of our biggest challenges in the county is retaining our 18 to 35-year-olds. They tend to leave for school, they tend to leave for jobs, they tend to leave for training. We do see them coming back 35, 40 years old to raise their families. We are seeing that, but we definitely have a gap, and we need to try to find a way to help resolve this. Both of my kids are in Sacramento County. Steve?
Yes, I've been involved with the economic development thing going back about 10 years, and one of the major issues right now, and it has been going on for about a year since you got your website going, you go to the economic development part, and there is no definition for what economic development is in El Dorado County, which means you just spent $100,000, not you, of course, I appreciate any volunteer that's doing this stuff, thank you, but we're spending $100,000 without having a definition, without having a target. You go bow hunting, you look at the target, and there's something in there they're going to shoot at. We don't have that.
Well, from my review of this, that will hopefully be the foundation for this. That's what I'm hoping, and I agree with you. There's a lot of money that has been set aside for this, and hopefully I'm seeing in the scope of work two sides of it. The definition.
Somewhere there has to be a simple definition for what economic development is. And economic development is not just creating a job here that keeps people here. It's about increasing the pot or revenue pot for the county. So if we're $1 billion a year county, we want to be $1.5 billion a year county. How do we get that done? That's in the definition. Thank you.
Right. The big question is, do we want to be $1.5 billion? But we need to address those, and hopefully this is a starting point. But from what I've learned, California counties and the state of California do a very poor job on economic development.
Sure.
So hopefully this will be the right step, but we won't know until we start seeing deliverables.
If the county added as an employer, or would you consider the two largest private companies that are large employers in the county?
The largest employer in the county is El Dorado County.
That's just
County government.
Right, you take them out, like
Marshall Hospital is number 2.
Another major employer.
And I think Blue Shield is number 3, but they change around, but they're all pretty close.
Red Hawk is a big employer. You heard that. Then they drop off real quickly. I employ over 50 people, and I'm on the radar, and that's what you're seeing. A lot of employers from 20 to 100 employees. That's probably the bulk of the businesses in the county.
Along those lines, if you look at the sales tax report that the county generates, is it quarterly or bi-quarterly? Typically in that top 25 are about a half dozen gas stations that generate sales tax.
Well, that's for sales tax.
That's
A lot of
sales tax.
employers don't pay.
I
sales
understand
tax.
that. No, but I mean, so when we're talking about economic development, it's jobs, so it's also things that Steve was saying, generating revenue to increase that pie, so that we can
Sales tax is another piece of that. But most of your jobs, most of your employers, you know, Vernon County, we're a service industry, so they don't pay that.
Exactly.
Anything else? I know it's getting late.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to go to healthy communities. So Josh, you want to introduce Lauren, or do you want to give a lead in?
That'd be great. So I'm Josh Elder again, an ER doc, and I was the main doc on at UC Davis when the Paradise fires occurred. And in a short note, devastation in kind of seeing the tragedy of the patients that came in. And John, I really appreciate his leadership, and I'm really excited that he's going to run again for supervisor because of the leadership that he presents for our community and really getting me engaged in the local community as well. Recently, there's been a lot of conversation around the fire insurance issue and the threat it poses to our communities. And it's something that I see that I need to kind of get increasingly involved in as an ER doc because this transcends kind of my role as a physician into the community today. And recently, the Democratic Party locally has been getting very practical and pragmatic about how do they solve community-based issues. And so it's interesting that with the strategic planning initiative that the county is doing, also the Democratic Party has gone about doing a strategic planning initiative focusing on issues like fire, broadband, veterans, economic development, and housing. So it sounds like there's a lot of bipartisanship that should occur in our county to move our county forward. Today we have Lauren Hernandez, who's the head of the policy committee for the Democratic Party, talking more about the fire insurance issue and what the Democratic Party is doing locally to build essentially a consensus as a county and to share that with our governor and our state insurance commissioner to essentially move forward. Because in essence, the governor and the state insurance commissioner, it seems like they share a vision for what we need, but they need details as a county about how to get there and what they should be focusing on to improve the issue around fire insurance. So Lauren, do you want to say a few words about that?
Thanks, Josh. It's great to be here. It's way past my bedtime, but this is a lot of interesting information as someone who grew up here in El Dorado County, and I'm one of those 18 to 35s that moved away, went to school, and have come back after starting a career and want to start my family here. So I appreciate the discussion around these issues, and fire insurance is what we're here to talk about tonight, and a lot of discussions going on about fire preparedness and mitigation efforts to improve your safety of your home and the property in our communities. And we really feel that protective insurance coverage needs to be a discussion as part of fire preparedness. There's been studies showing that communities that focused on or that had adequate access to protective fire insurance, such as in the Napa County region and those areas that were affected by fires, that they had far better recovery efforts than were neighboring counties in Lake County that were hit by fires, and they did not have access to fire insurance leading into that. 20% of their community was facing that, and it has affected their ability to recover and rebuild afterwards. So, access to affordable and protective fire insurance has become a great crisis for members of our county and the residents. It's more of an issue right now affecting people from Shingle Springs on up the county, but it is continuing to move down and down in Cameron Park, and as mentioned here in El Dorado Hills and even Folsom, and continuing on into Sacramento County that are affected by this issue. So as Josh mentioned, that we've really trying to take a proactive effort to work on not just identifying what are the issues, but try and see about what are the community-led solutions that can help and be a proactive way for our county to take a message forward to make sure that they're part of the discussion of what would be right for our community to solve this issue. So in doing that, our El Dorado Democratic Party led a letter and proposed that the county take urgent and formal action contacting the state commissioner and our state elected officials and all of the folks at the state that are responsible for this issue. And so that will be taking some action in writing to them, urging some urging them to take action on specific areas, including the first one being outreach. So as every day more and more people in the county are being affected by this, and they're turning to Facebook, they're turning to their fire safe councils, they're turning anywhere they can to find out after they get that notice that they were not renewed, and what do, what information do they have available to them, and what's the cheapest plan that they can get. Well, cheapest plan isn't necessarily the best plan, so just having insurance doesn't mean that it's protective insurance. So we need to make sure that there's proactive efforts for outreach to bring non-impartial resources or nonprofits that would help our community navigate this issue, and have our community do workshops and ways that they can navigate selecting new plans that are protective for them. And also the Insurance Commissioner's Office, the California Department of Insurance, has resources available that we urge our county to request them to send resources here to do proactive outreach in collaboration with our state elected officials. The next one, as talked about today, whether it's your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, your fire score rating, there is no standard, that transparent standard that the insurance industry follows. So you and your neighbor next to you, one could be renewed, one could be non-renewed, one could be offered insurance, one could not be offered insurance. It's not standardized. It's a highly regulated industry, but as far as determining whether you are provided coverage, it's not standardized. The other issue is that there's no centralized data tracking system. So I know it was mentioned that it's small companies that are really more doing this, but it's not. There's big companies like AAA, which is the largest insurer in the state, who has redlined the 95667 zip code and will not write in that area, and has dropped over 7,000 people in non-renewals. There's no centralized data tracking to where that would go to our county and to our state officials to then let them know that here's exactly what the data is in real time, because these are real issues that need to be responded to right away, and proactively to know that this is coming, say 6 months ahead of time would be much better than a 45-day notice. So we're urging that the county talk about that real issue, that there needs to be transparent data tracking, outreach, and also there needs to be some standardization of how they determine an individual home's risk and the insurability, because it's really wild west right now, and it's really hard for consumers to navigate. And with that, we just also urge that our county reach out to other communities. We're not alone. There's 3.6 million homes across our state that are located within the high fire, excuse me, the wildfire urban interface, WUI. 3.6 million homes across our state. So we're not alone as a community. Like we said, this is a bipartisan issue. We're working across the aisle here. It's a community issue, neighbor to neighbor. We need everyone and anyone across our state. It affects our community here economically. There's huge impacts. We're seeing, like I said, in the real estate industry is reporting that. And there's a number of communities from San Diego all the way up to the Oregon border in our state that are feeling this issue. So we want a community-led solution. So our county leading up, saying, here's what we're seeing in our community, here's what we propose as solutions, include us as part of the discussion for any solutions that are being proposed, and then have the state work then with the local jurisdictions. So that's our message, and that's what we're working on. I do have copies of letters if anyone would like them, just to kind of see specifically what we put in there. But again, I just appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Lauren. One thing I want to add is Josh and Lauren provided a letter that the Nevada County Board of Supervisors submitted to the state, and I've discussed that with our CAO, and I'm going to bring forward an item on the agenda as quickly as our staff can get it prepared and stuff to do something similar, to go on record as a county. We're also trying to get much more active with RCRC, the rural counties, representing our communities organization. Lori Parlin, who is a fellow supervisor, is assigned to that committee. Kind of the disappointing part in my mind was they're talking about an August 2020, no later than report date. We got to do a lot of stuff before August of 2020. It's too far down the road. So there's been a lot of studies, there's been a lot of discussion, but I think now is the time to step forward and start working from the local community to the county and submitting things to the state to make sure we're part of the discussion so that they can understand the criteria that's driving where we are. And even to the point if we can anticipate loss of property values because people decide they can't afford to get insurance anymore, whatever it may be, they can't sell their home, whatever, that the state would recognize that, start recognizing, similar to what they did up in Butte County, because they are providing the state's, in the governor's budget this year, money to supplement the loss of property tax. You know, the assessed valuation dropped dramatically because of the fire losses up there. The state's trying to help bail out Butte County, but the state's going to have to look at bailing out all the rural counties if we don't get moving on this, and that's kind of one of the things I think we need to understand. They're going to be asked to do that through, if we can't take enough action working together. So collaboration, bipartisan, you know, it's one of the few examples I've seen where you can drop all of the things associated with politics and address the local community issue. I just hope we grow in those ventures and start those discussions of how we help our communities and forget the politics at the state level and the national level. Hopefully that'll happen over time.
With that,
discussions are good.
With that said, it'd be great to have a joint press conference with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I'm having a lunch with the head
Right.
of
The lunch is set up to start up the discussion, so yes.
Great. This is moving forward.
And when we went before the board last week, it was on the 25th, we kind of organized a community action, just posting on social media, on the internet, for folks to come forward. And when we presented the letter in person, we had already provided advance copies to the board, but wanted to make a public display. It wasn't an agenda item, but anyone can comment in public forum, so we showed up and appreciate the supervisor's attention to it. It did take up a lot of time. But we did reach out, and we did have our Republican counterparts there, and we were sitting right next to each other and came up and proposed, you know, this is, it's a community issue, and that's, I think, what happens when you're focused on the issues that matter to the community. You can come together on things, and that's the same process we've gone through. And this is just one example of that, but we plan to continue that on a lot of issues that were discussed tonight. So fire is just really that urgent, pressing issue, and we feel the same way. We can't wait 2 years, a year. This is happening right now, and if a fire strikes later in the year, we have this number of people who have been dropped, and we don't have the actual data. We don't know how many people are going without insurance because they can't afford it. That's going to make it that much more harder for our community to recover and respond afterwards. So insurance is a huge part in this. We want to make sure that we can be as proactive as possible, and we're already kind of behind the curve on that. So we really need to get out there and make sure that our communities understand this, and even if they have insurance, that it's adequate and protected insurance, not just cheapest and what they can afford, because when it comes, I think we've seen from what we've learned from these other communities is that they were severely underinsured, and that's a huge issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, happenings. Cindy, can you share with us?
Real quickly, well, one, it's not, already knows happenings, but it's on this list here, since we're talking about wildfire. PG&E is having an open house in Placerville, July 25th, and we have representatives there talking about wildfire safety, emergency preparedness, preparing for all the power shutoffs. So if you guys want to talk to representatives from PG&E, they're going to be there, and I have a link to this, and it'll be on the website too, so you can link to all the information on that. And to piggyback off of Chief Foley and talk about the town center, if you went to those, the fireworks this time, it's totally different. They're going to start passing out wristbands at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're only going to give out 150 this time, so it's going to be a completely different event this time. So go to the Eldorado Hills Town Center website for all the information, a whole bunch of information on that. And a lot of the district churches doing something, and Rolling Hills churches, they're on country bands and they're on so it's going to be a really good event. Farmers market continues, all the different concerts are continuing. So just lots of fun things happening here in our town. So again, there's links that you can get in here, but go to the supervisor's website and put on the link, so go right to all the information. And I'm very happy that Supervisor Heidel is going to be hopefully representing us again at for another 4 years. He's done a fabulous job, I think, and really bring our community together. So happy to hear it.
Thank you. Okay. Just real quick, council member items. Our next meeting is Monday, August the 5th, so mark your calendar if you're available. Our guest speaker will be Lieutenant Matt Stover, who's from the CHP. So Rob has given us a lot of information, but I think it would be good to have Matt come and talk about the administrator part of it, knowing how
He delegates the resources he has across the county, what are his key viewpoints, what are the things that he hears going on at the state that may change some things, hopefully, in terms of additional staffing, whatever it may be. So we've invited Matt to be our guest speaker. And as far as I know, that's still on track. If he's unable to make it because of some emergency or something, then we'll probably have Rob back, but hopefully he'll be here. He lives in Folsom, so he's pretty close. So hopefully that will happen. And with that, unless there's any go-backs, anything?
One,
Yes.
from what Tim said, we did get a newsletter from Folsom this afternoon, and they said those 6 lights are supposed to be active in this month.
Oh, this month? Okay.
That's what the newsletter said today.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you all for attending. This month.